Hey, everybody. Thanks so much for coming out and joining us out on a limb with Gabby Allan. Today, I have the absolute pleasure of bringing you Margot Johnson. And we are going to have a blast as we talk about, books and writing and all the things. As usual, I have, I have one prepared question because that's just how I roll. And Margot, that's for you. What is it that you do and how do you do it?
Great. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. I love
My
talking about
pleasure.
books and writing.
Good.
And right now, what I'm doing is I write contemporary romance, and I write with the Wild Rose Press,
Mhm.
and I have two books out and one in the works.
Ooh.
Yeah. So, yeah, I guess I think of myself as a writer
Oh,
in my heart,
you are?
and yeah,
If
but I
you're
have
writing
always
books.
felt that. Even before I became an author, I feel like I was a writer.
Oh,
And so I'm excited about pursuing my dreams. It's really my dream.
oh, that's wonderful.
Hmm.
That's so had you always wanted to write, but then life kind of intervened and you did other things first?
Yes, yes. When I was much younger, I was really into magazine writing. I wanted to
Oh,
be a journalist.
okay.
So I had a couple of articles in a major women's magazine, Canadian women's magazine, Chatelaine. And that was
Okay.
my big goal at the time. Then I had children. Then I was really into children's picture books and came
Okay.
very close to having one published. But the publisher went out of business before it ever was
Yeah.
finished.
Those are hard to do too. I think, I was talking to somebody else a couple of weeks ago, and it's interesting because a lot of people think that children's books are easy to write. I thought that too. I'm gonna just put it out there because it's like 45 words, right? No. Those are so much harder than having 75,000 words to work with to get your whole story across. You have to be very specific in a children's book.
You do, and every word has to count.
Yes,
And
yes, and
you
be
can't,
graded. So, like, if you're writing for the 3 to 6 set, you're going to use a specific level of words versus writing for the 7 to 10 set because you need to make sure that there are things that they will be able to pick up on. I found looking into writing children's books fascinating. I couldn't
mhm.
do it, but that's very awesome. Did you end up ever doing anything with that book, or you just kind of let it slide
It's
out?
kind of there. I mean,
Okay.
I have a few stories that are just kind of simmering on the back burner.
Yeah, we
Nothing may
all
ever
do.
come of them, but we'll see. We'll see. You said that they look easy, but they're hard. I
Yeah.
find that with all writing. I
Yes.
mean, a good romance, people sometimes sort of brush it off as, well,
Yeah.
anybody could do that, and it's
Mm,
kind of light,
no.
and it's just not that way.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Exactly. It is interesting. You will get people like at conferences or at book signings. You're like, oh, I always wanted to write a book, and I'm like, oh, well, strap yourself in because it's not an easy thing. I mean, there's a certain amount of solitary work in it. There's also, getting the words down on the page, and once you get the words down on the page, it's not like all of a sudden it's done. You still have to edit it and send it out into the world, and there's a process. I think that some people step into not realizing that it's bigger than just letting your characters talk on paper,
Yeah, I think that's right. I've had so many people say to me, "Oh, I've always wanted to write a book."
right?
And my answer to them is just do it. So many
Yes.
people start or they think about it, and you can think about it forever,
Oh yeah.
but it's like
Oh
get
yeah.
busy and write. And
Yeah.
I like to set a word count goal for myself
Oh,
and
okay.
write at least 1,000 words a day
Nice.
and just keep rolling through it. I
Yes.
know I talk to some people who like to go back and revise as they go, but I find that to keep my momentum going, I
Yeah.
just like to roll through.
Right. That's
Yeah.
that's totally me. I love people who are like, well, I write 1,000 words, and then the next day to prep myself for the next 1,000 words, I read and edit the 1,000 words I wrote the day before, and I'm like, I would have the same 4 pages. That
I would too. I'd be
that's it.
rewriting those.
Yep, those 4
Yeah.
pages would be amazing. I'm not, you know what I mean? Like they would shine like a play on Broadway. They would
Right.
be amazing, but the rest of the book would not get written because I would be so focused. And as we were talking about right before we got started recording, one of my loves of this podcast is to be able to talk to people who say, I really want to write a book, and show them that there are as many ways to do this as there are people doing it. You know, 1,000 words a day is awesome. Some people write 500. Some people write only on the weekends because they have, you know, really little kids and they have work, you know, they do a day job. And so they find like an hour or 2 on the weekends. And there's no wrong way to do this.
No, I think the biggest thing is to have that goal, keep your eyes on the goal, but then do the work, just do it. And I can't honestly say that every time I sit down, I really feel like it.
No.
I usually,
No.
but I force myself. And
Yes.
usually once I've written a few words, I kind of get on a roll and continue, and it feels good.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's a beauty to, there used to be something called the, I think it was called the 100 Club. And so it was 100 days of 100 words. That was your minimum. And if you skipped a day, you had to start over again on your 100 days. When I belonged to a writers group, we would do 50 days of 50 words. And there were so many people who, you know, like that means you've written 2,500 words in an entire 50-day period. People would be coming in with like 25,000, 30,000, 12,000. And I'm like, you are a serious overachiever. And they're like, well, I didn't do very much. And I'm like, but you wrote every single day.
Yeah.
And a lot of times 50 words is like a paragraph. And like you said, once you start writing, a lot of times your brain is like, oh, okay, that's what you want me to do. And then you go forward. Do you plan your books out ahead of time so that you kind of know where you're going, or are you more of a write as you go?
I think I'm a combination.
Okay.
Sometimes I've been forced into a little bit of planning because an editor wants a synopsis, a publisher wants a synopsis.
Yes.
So you have to think a little bit about where it's going.
Right.
But honestly, I love letting my characters take me places.
Yeah.
And sometimes as I go along, there's little, you know, turns or little plot points that pop up that I hadn't anticipated at the start.
Right.
But I find characters really take on a life of their own.
Absolutely.
And as you write, you get to know them better, and then they start to do things. And so,
and you're like, no, don't do that. Don't do that. Oh, all right, fine. Because it's going to come out somewhere.
Exactly.
I think, you know, I have talked to people who do like intense character studies. They know all the background. They know like what their favorite color was when they were 3, and, you know, what specifically happened to put them on this path. I, like you, tend to be more of an in the middle kind of person. I generally know like a little of their backstory, who they are, and then I let them run. And there are times where I am like, oh, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? But then when I go with it, I have had it where I've had to curb it back and edit some of it out because it didn't make sense anymore. But then there's also been these beautiful pieces of like, ooh, I don't know where that came from, but we're running with that one. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. I think I've learned along the way that it's helpful to make notes.
Yes.
Because I mean, some people have their character drawn out and they know the details.
Yeah.
Sometimes I'm proofreading and I realize, oh, that character's eyes changed from blue to brown.
I did that too. It was like the first half of the book, I think he had blue eyes, and the second half of the book, they're grass green. And I'm like, well, you're gonna have to change one because this is not something like, you didn't get colored contacts or anything. So you kind of gotta make sure that you're consistent. Do you have that? So some people call those kind of notes a book Bible. So do you do that so that you like it's a formal document type thing, or are you like literally just writing them on note cards?
I have a notebook where I keep my writing details.
Yes.
So the work in progress that I have, I've started to list the characters and what they look like. And, you know, I had to learn things along the way. Like my editor pointed out that don't name two characters with the same, starting with the same letter. You know, Dave and Drew get confusing to read.
Yes.
So I keep notes of things like that, and I keep an alphabet of names so that I'm not being repetitious in names. And then I like to make notes about what happens in each chapter, because when you get further along, or sometimes I like to go back and find out at what point something happened.
Yes.
So I do that, but I keep it in just a notebook, and I keep thinking, you know what, you should get better and more detailed at this. I guess those are just the ways that I'm not that detailed.
And that's really, again, it's really okay as long as it serves the purpose that you need it to serve. And I find it, I love that as writers grow, they tend to emerge more in certain things. So while they might do the notebook when they're, you know, or maybe they started out doing sticky notes, you know, and then they'll move into a notebook, and then from a notebook they'll move into like a folder, or they'll move into like a program. Some people stay with the notebook. I mean, I have hundreds of notebooks because I can't pass up buying them, because we are stationary lovers as writers, I think. But a notebook works just fine. And if that's what you're doing, then I don't see, you know, if you find a method later on that is more like something you want to try, there's nothing wrong with doing that. I've run across a couple of authors who are like, my process is different now. And I'm like, well, once you get into writing your 10th or 15th or 20th book, you'll have learned enough that maybe something else does better. I mean, I'm at 50 books right now. Wow. And I certainly do not write the way I wrote when I first started. However, there are certain things that I absolutely still do like I did when I first started. So, you know, I don't think there's no wrong way to do it. So do you write series, or are your contemporary romances single titles?
I've written 2 single titles that are published now. Love Takes Flight and Love Leads the Way.
So they're not connected?
They're not connected.
Oh, okay.
But I chose titles that were somehow connected because I thought that would help with branding.
Okay.
That's kind of another story. I don't think I would do that again.
You have to learn what not to do along with what to do.
Yeah, for sure. But I just finished the first book in the Cookie series. The Wild Rose Press is doing a Christmas series, and every book has to have a title of a cookie in the title, the name of a cookie. So I've written book 1, and I am working on book 2 now with the same characters. So it will become a series.
Very cool. So these are the novellas that Wild Rose Press put a call out for.
Right.
And you're going to do 2 different ones that you are turning in so that they can be like connected with the Wild Rose Press?
Yes. Yeah, they're connected. So the first one is a Christmas story. And I love the characters, the main character. No, I'm sure you feel this way too, that sometimes you get more connected to a character, or you really like a certain character.
Yes.
So the character in that book launches a new tour business.
Okay.
So in the Christmas book, she takes people on tours to bakeries and samples Christmas cookies.
Right. I love it.
In the second book, she'll have another tour, and there'll be a new hero and heroine that are but there's connections to the original book. So I'm quite excited about that. I also have the idea for the third. So that will become no, the tour piece of it is the linking part, but it will be tours and special occasions.
Very nice. I love it. I am actually going to do the ice cream one scoop or 2.
Yes.
So for next summer. So but I write a lot of especially for the Wild Rose Press, I write a lot of paranormal for them. And so I have a woman who owns a junkyard, who everything in the junkyard has a ghost attached to it, and they're very badly behaved. She's very much into the 80s. And so all of the titles have to do with 80s, like Desperately Seeking Salvage, Don't Dream It's Rover, I Wear My Ghost Goggles at Night, stuff like that. So for the ice cream, you have to have ice cream in the title. So I had Rhonda on the other day and I was like, so how do you feel about Sunday, Bloody Sunday? She was like, okay. So I am going to put them at the beach and at an ice cream shop where I think something happened that no one knows about, and they're the only ones who can see it. And but I love that the Wild Rose Press puts these things out that maybe it's not a story you would have come up with on your own, but it is a story that you can make your own with your characters.
Yeah, for sure. It's really good that way and really fun that way. The other thing about this series is that they're shorter, they're novellas. Yes. Which is really, that's a nice way to step into writing too. And even for someone who's published full-length books, it's just sort of a refreshing change. Because if you do 1,000 words a day, like I try to do, in less than a month, you're done. Your book. Yeah. So
absolutely. Well, and I sometimes I really like doing shorter stories sometimes, because people, especially price-wise, people will take a chance on you for 99 cents. Where that if you had made it into a full-length novel, even as an ebook, it's going to be like $4.99, $6.99, $7.99, or as a physical book, it's going to be $12.99, $13.99. And so at 99 cents, they can get a flavor for what kind of writer you are. Do they like the kind of stories that you tell? And then hopefully go pick up your other 2 books because they liked the shorter one that you made.
For sure. I've been listening to a lot of writing podcasts. Good. And a lot of writers will do that for exactly that reason that you described, so that people can try a sample and decide if they like a new writer.
Right. Well, and I mean, there have been writers that people will crow over. They're like, I love this. And I'll try it out. And I'm like, yeah, it's not quite my cup of tea. I think it's a great story, but it's not something that I would read. I wouldn't have picked that up on my own. Sometimes though, I'm like, oh my gosh, where have you been all my life? And I'll go out and buy everything that they have, because I love the way that they write. I love the characters that they talk about. Peggy Jaeger was on a couple of weeks ago, and she writes different genres, but her thing was that her core story is always the same. It's about strong women and the men who love them and the families who support them. And so do you feel like with the 2 that you have, and then the novellas that you're working on, do you feel like your core story is the same?
I think so. And I'm really trying to get to a point where I can narrow it down and come up with the right tagline so that people know what to expect.
Yes.
I do know that my stories, they're warm. I wouldn't call them comedies, but I think there's lighter moments in them.
Yes.
There's also some tougher issues. I think one thing my characters have in common, my heroines all have a dream, and they're working hard to achieve their dream. And to me, family is very important too. So the family always enters in, and maybe the subplot includes the family.
Okay.
So I've been toying with sunshine for your heart, because in the end you come away with a good feeling.
Yes.
But I'm working on it.
Yeah. I do like that. My concern would be that it's they would need to know that you're an author already.
Right.
So you have to play with that. I used to write, when I wrote contemporary romance, my tagline was "Come home to love and laughter," because almost all of my people were in one way or another returning to a life that they thought they wanted away from and rebuilding it as something that they love. And so I actually, this was way long ago when Vistaprint was kind of new. They used to have these cards that had little houses on the bottom, and they were for real estate agents. I was like, nope, they're mine now. And so because it was all these little hand-drawn houses, it was really cute. But taglines can be really, they seem like, just like with the children's book,
Right.
it's like 4 or 5 words, but you have to pack so much punch into those 4 or 5 words that it becomes harder to do, so with the Gabby Allan name, because there's already an author underneath, that one is a little charm, a little charm, no, yeah, a little charm, a little mayhem, a lot of fun, because they're murder mysteries. And then the Misty Simon one is ... knows who done it. However, the knows who done it is hard for some people because they think like I'm a private investigator or something. like
it though. It caught my eye.
Yes.
But you're not a private investigator.
Right. No, I'm not. And that's the kind of thing. So do you belong to any kind of writers groups or anything where you have people to kind of bounce stuff off of, or are you more of a by yourself kind of writer?
Well, I guess I'm an introvert, and I'm good with spending time on my own.
Yes.
And I guess I'm independent enough that I like to come up with my own ideas.
Totally understandable.
That's it. My sister writes. She's written 2 books for Harlequin, Love Inspired. Working
awesome.
on her 3rd. Yeah. And I have a great writers group, Saskatchewan Romance Writers. And we're pretty informal.
Okay.
It's sort of like a coffee meeting.
Yes.
But then we have a private Facebook group. Nice. So they're wonderful about providing feedback, and I definitely could go to them to bounce ideas off. And we have some amazing writers in that group. One of them is Mary Balog, New York Times bestselling author.
I know who that is.
And she's generous and gracious about being supportive to all the newbies in the crowd.
That's wonderful.
Yeah, it is. It is.
That's awesome. Yeah, I go back and forth. I'm like you. There are a lot of times where I'm like, I just want to do this on my own. I got this. It'll be fine. And then sometimes where I'm like, all right, I've done it on my own. This is the best I've come up with. Can somebody look at it and just kind of tell me whether or not there's something better that I can do with it? You know what I mean? So I do think writers groups are a beautiful thing because it does make you feel not so alone. And it also gives you people who get what you're saying. My husband, we've been married for 24 years. I've been writing for 20 of those. Well, a little longer than that, actually. And he understands because I've talked to him about some of the stuff, but he does not understand like another writer understands. Does that make sense?
It does, for sure. Yeah, writers understand. And I find the writers I've met and the writers I talk to online are so supportive.
Yes.
I guess they understand how difficult it is.
Yes.
And how you can use some encouraging words and some uplifting at times.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah.
Absolutely. Because there are days where you're like, why am I doing this to myself?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know what I have found? One thing that's been a surprise to me is how much marketing a writer has to do.
Oh my God.
It's not that you can just finish the book, hand it over, and there you go. And I used to work in marketing, and of course everything has changed because it's all about social media now.
Yeah.
And so that's challenging. And the challenge also is, how do you divide your time between writing and promoting? Because I think both of them could be a full-time job.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. I just had a new book come out from Kensington in July, and my calendar was ridiculous. It was awesome, but it was ridiculous because, I'm jumping in on this, jumping in on that. Make sure that you're posting on Instagram every day. Make sure you're doing teasers on Facebook. Am I taking over Facebook this day? It is. I mean, even with a bigger company, because I know like the Wild Rose Press has a limited budget when it comes to the advertising. They do make a lot of things available to us, but then you have to put in for that. Kensington is a different animal because they're one of the big five. But even they, there's only so much they can do. And I have to go out and find other opportunities to get my book out in front of people because there are so many now.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the other thing I realized from the, I think everybody has the dream of becoming a best-selling author or having, a great fan base.
Yeah.
But it's a competitive field.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of wonderful writers out there. So.
Absolutely. And that's, I love my writers groups because we're all very boosting of each other. I haven't come across, I was in one once that had some jealousy and stuff. And I was like, yeah, I can't do this because I'm not, I understand that maybe it's not happening for you and it is for me at the moment, but I would be just as happy if it was happening for you and not for me at the moment. And so I tend to surround myself with people who, are more of the believer in the more ships, the more we float, than the ones that there's only one spot left and I'm taking it. Do you know what I mean?
For sure. And I think, yeah, on one hand, sure, it's competitive for readers to make that choice. Yeah. On the other hand, there are room in the world for good writers.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, I think it's more helpful to help everyone succeed.
Exactly. Well, and that just gets more readers who are eventually going to run out of things to read and hopefully come find your stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
So when you're writing contemporary romances, do you put them like in a small town, or is there a thread through them that something like small towns, or is it more wherever in your brain this seems to be happening?
What I've done so far is write about what's close to me. Oh, okay. I'm from Western Canada. Okay. And I feel like there's lots of books and stories that are set in famous and far-flung places.
Yes.
So I've used what I know, and I've set my 2 books, one in the city where I live and one in a small city close by. My cool. Series is a fictional small town set in my province.
Okay.
So I like the small town dynamic, where there's a community of characters, people who know each other. And I know that I like that in books where I can recognize things and then you see them again and realize that they're connected. Yeah.
I definitely love writing because I write cozy mysteries. So that is almost always a small town. And I love being able to have secondary characters that add to the story and that the reader will then be like, what's going on with, Mama Shirley? And Mama Shirley is not the main character at all, but she ends up being somebody that really resonates with some of the readers. And so then they enjoy getting an update on her when you connect books and she happens to also be in that book. Yeah. So that's definitely something I love.
Yeah. I think that's a lot of fun. And I really enjoy writing my secondary characters. For some reason, they really come to life for me. Yes. And I think they add a lot to a story.
Yeah, that's awesome. So when you're doing contemporary, you're doing like mainly it's all focused on the romance?
I would say, no, I try to have a strong plot aside from the romance. The romance is interwoven.
Got it.
But there's something that brings it together other than the romance. So in my first one, I love dogs. So in my first book, the woman owned a dog kennel business. Oh. Yeah. And she encountered a pilot, a military jet pilot. And so the story is around, they are storm stayed. Okay. Because of a big prairie storm. So they both have issues to work through, but it's the forced proximity. And so the plot is not just the romance, but of course it is interwoven. Okay. My second book is similar. They work together. It's an office romance. And they work together and they're thrown together again into a program. She leads a leadership development program he's forced into it because he needs to brush up on his people skills. So, it's the growth through that and unexpected romance along the way.
That's awesome. I know a lot of people will say, this is more for the listener than it is necessarily for you, but a lot of people are like, oh, there are tropes. Yeah, there are tropes for a reason. The people like the tropes. People like the specific kind of story. And I think especially in romance, people really enjoy the friends to lovers, the enemies to lovers, the forced proximity, the job office romance. And so, if you can go in having an idea of what it is that you're doing with this couple, then you just blossom off of that. Do you pick your tropes before you get started, or do you realize once you're in it that you have done this particular trope?
I think I've thought about it, knowing that they're popular.
Yeah.
And knowing that there's certain things I appreciate. In my newest book that's coming out, the characters, it's more of a mature romance.
I love it.
Second chance for them.
I love second chance romance. That is one of my favorite things ever. And I think as an author, I really like it because you already have so much history that they have to work through together that they didn't work through last time.
Yeah, I guess, and in my case, the second chance is a second chance romance for a couple who are more approaching middle age. So they've had successful romances in the past, and then they're coming together. Yeah.
I like that.
I'm liking writing about people that are closer to my own age, because so often it's a younger couple, and I like reading about people that have had some life experience and have a different perspective on things. So that's something that I'm moving into now.
Yeah, well, and I think there's a real desire for those. And then I was just yesterday or Saturday, I was talking to S.K. Andrews, who is also a Wild Rose Press author. And one of the things that I love about the Wild Rose Press is that even if that particular genre is not hugely, hugely popular with the masses, the Wild Rose Press is not going to stop you from writing that kind of story because there are readers who want it. And I think that, the Wild Rose Press is very good about serving the needs of, there is something for everyone.
For sure. And it's not just romance. I mean, they're open to other kinds of women's fiction, which I think would be, I'd like my books to head more in that direction so that it isn't just the romance. I like to read books that have a little romantic element. But there's much more to it than that.
And so I started out writing romance because after I tried to write a children's book and realized that there was no way that was ever going to happen, I moved into romance because I used to read a lot of Harlequin. They were short. You always knew what you were getting at the end. It was good stuff. I loved it. I'm not very good at it. That's not true. The ones that I've written, I love. I do. My brain does not immediately roll into the romance aspect. My brain rolls into the mystery aspect and the growth of the woman. 9 times, you want to talk about a core story. My core story is my heroines know their flaws and they own them and they make them work for themselves. And sometimes they haven't before. Sometimes they've spent their whole life trying to not be what they are. And so in these stories, they tend to find out exactly what they really are and then learn to love who they are instead of being somebody that they're not just to please everyone around them. And
what a great message.
Thank you. No, please. Like I said, conversation. If we were sitting at Starbucks, you totally would have jumped in. I'm good with that. But so I also like the more women's fiction. Years and years ago, it was also called chick lit, which it's kind of, my stuff's not all the way chick lit, but it's not all the way women's fiction either, because I don't tend to have somebody suffering through like a really, really bad thing. Like a lot of women's fiction deals with like somebody dying or your marriage falling apart or that kind of thing. And they don't always have happy endings. I have to have a happy ending. And so with that, I tend to like write a line, but I love that the Wild Rose Press is like, yeah, bring it on. What line are you writing this time? I don't think, and there are readers who love that kind of stuff. And so being able to interact with somebody who will never actually physically meet me is pretty cool.
For sure. I got a letter from a reader, just an email from a reader just recently.
Yes.
And it was like, wow, to connect with somebody who I don't know and have them appreciate things it's really nice, because I don't know how often that happens. For a newer writer, not that often. Probably for you with 50 books, you probably hear from people all the time.
Not always. I mean, sometimes I do. Sometimes they're the same people that I've interacted with. I have a lot of readers that have been with me from the beginning.
Yes.
And so I will hear from them. But as far as like brand spanking new people who are just being introduced to me, sometimes, not always. But yeah, I don't care. I could have 150 books out and get a reader letter, and I would be just as excited as the first one I ever got. It's like opening boxes of books. Your books come in. I don't care if it's your second book or your 300th book. When you crack open that box, you are in a whole different reality, because you're like, it's my name.
It meant so much to me to have my name on a printed book. And I know that the world is moving to online books more and more, and audio books, which is great too. But to have a book, I've got them right here.
Show us. The book.
Books that you can hold in your hand and that you can think, I did that.
Yeah. It's and it's interesting because I was writing when ebooks started really taking off, and there was this whole movement of, print books are going to go out of style and everyone's only going to read ebooks. I really don't think that will ever happen. I think there are too many people who love paper, and there are too many people who love the physicality of a book in their hands, especially like at the beach or on vacation or something like that. I totally take my Kindle just in case I don't like the paper book I have, because I prefer to read paper books.
I do too. Yeah. You can't take an electronic book into the bathtub as easily.
No. Right. Probably don't.
Yeah. No, I like the feel of a book, the cover of a book.
And I like turning the pages. And I like seeing how many pages I have left. Because so on my Kindle, it'll tell me you're 68% done. Okay, awesome. I've got, what is that? 31% left to go, or 32% left to go. Right. But how many pages is that? I can't see it in my head. I like the physicality of the book, the physicality of flipping the pages, of seeing where a chapter ends and going, oh man, I've got like 40 pages left, and I should be sleeping right now. I'm supposed to be going to bed, but this is too good. And 40 pages isn't that big of a deal. You know what I mean? Really, it makes a difference to me. And I buy pretty much everything that I buy in paper, because I love having them, and I also love sharing them. If somebody wants to borrow it, or at a used paper bookstore or something, to be able to trade them in. I don't think that print books are truly ever going to completely go away.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so either. And I'm happy that we still have them.
Absolutely. And I love that you're writing older heroines, because I'll tell you what, in a couple of the book groups that I'm in on Facebook, they're looking for that. Not everybody understands the 20-year-old experience right now. I have a 20-year-old, and there are things that I'm like, where did that even come from? Like, what? And so writing a heroine who is living in that time frame, can be a little harder for somebody who's completely removed from that time frame. And I think as a reader, reading about somebody who's in that time frame is not always as wonderful as reading about somebody who's closer to your time frame.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that you can relate to your characters, of course.
Yes.
All kinds of characters, but
yeah,
I don't always want to read about somebody who's my daughter's age
Yeah.
or younger.
Right. You know, and that's, I love young adult novels. I love that people write young adult novels. I don't tend to read a lot of young adult novels because that they're in a, it's not that I if I'm going to read a young adult novel, most likely I'm reading a fantasy. A contemporary young adult, I will be happy to pass those on to anybody because I think they're amazing. But for my leisure reading, I don't tend to read as many of those. I do, however, love reading about women who are in like their 40s or their 50s and they live this whole life and then something happened and it's not there anymore. And now they have to figure out what happens next.
Yeah.
You know?
Talking about reading things that you don't normally read.
Yes.
As much of, I'm in a book club. Okay. And I find that my book club is really good for getting me to read things I wouldn't have picked off the shelf myself. So sometimes it's good, but I know that if it wasn't for the book club and if I didn't have to go and discuss it next month, I might not persevere. So, you know, I think it's good to get a little variety.
Absolutely.
The other thing I find though is I don't like to read certain things when I'm writing.
Yes.
Because I want to make sure that I keep true to my own voice.
Right. Have you ever found an author that you're like reading them and then all of a sudden you're writing and you're like, why do I sound like that author? Stop it.
Yeah, that's not me.
That's hysterical. I'm so happy I'm not alone.
Is that right? Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. So yeah, I don't want, it's like it's contagious or something. I don't want to catch someone else's voice.
And that is a fantastic phrase. I love that so much. Well, and it's true because some people have a very distinctive voice. And if it resonates with you, there's kind of a part of you that can also almost filter it through. And it's not deliberate. You're not trying to write like this person, but their storytelling style is so distinct that you're like, okay, this is going off the rails from what I would normally do. And so I do have to put those books down, or I'll finish it real quick and then palate cleanse a little bit and then get back into my own stuff. I don't always read a lot of cozy mysteries because I'm nervous about either realizing somebody else has already just done the murder that I wanted to do or that I will not be able to get away from wanting to do a murder that they just did. And so I do write, I read, you know, the fantasies, I read contemporary romance and stuff like that. I read thrillers sometimes because I don't necessarily want to mix my paints, you know, and if I'm trying to do something and I'm reading something that's too close to what I do, that can be detrimental to me.
Yes.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh. So we're over time now.
It was so good to talk with you.
Yes. This has been a blast. Honestly, I would love to have you back on when your Christmas stuff comes out. If you want to come talk about jingle bells and cookies and tour guides, I would love to get back in touch with you. This was so much fun. I loved all the different subjects that we covered. I love the voice thing. I think I'm going to have to write that down. And so you tell us, where can we find you, Margot?
Yes. And first of all, thank you for having me. And I hope that somehow, if a new writer or aspiring writer is listening, I hope it's encouraging because really, if I can do this, you can do this.
And that's my thing too.
Yeah. But anyway, I have a brand new website, which is still developing, but it's margotjohnson.ca. Okay. I'm on Facebook, author Margot Johnson. I'm on Twitter. Author Margot. Okay. Margot has a T on the end. We were talking about this before the show, but it's Margot.
Okay.
And Johnson.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'm out there on social media and would love to hear from people and would love to hear reviews of my books. Yeah. I find that I hear people have read them, but maybe people are hesitant to post a review. And I think that's a big gift that you can give a writer.
Absolutely.
Is to post a review. And I don't expect it to be perfect necessarily, but
no.
Yeah.
Tell me what you liked. Tell me what maybe I didn't do so well. Let me see if it's something that I'd be willing to not do again in that book, but moving forward.
Yeah,
I'm open to suggestions. Sometimes I can do them, sometimes I can't. But I'm always willing to listen to what the reader liked and what they wished was a little bit different. So, so your Christmas book, is that the Christmas book that you're working on, the cookie book that you're working on right now, is that coming out before the end of the year?
It's coming out November 2nd. It's called Let It Snowball.
Oh,
it's a lot of fun. I really do think it's fun.
Oh, good. Yeah. Well, I will definitely put it on my list of wants. Because I would love to see. I haven't had a chance to read any of your stuff yet. I would love to get in because I feel like I'm gonna love it.
Oh, great. Well, yours too. So
awesome.
We both have something new for our reading list.
Yes, we can have a mutual admiration society. All right. Well, we're gonna go ahead and shut it down. Thank you everyone for being here. As I've offered before, if there's anything that Margot or I can answer for you, please leave your question in the comments section. I will definitely bring Margot over and point her to anything that you ask for her. And thanks again for coming out on a limb with Gabby, Allan. These are just so much fun, and I hope that you're gaining knowledge, and I hope that you're gaining the ability to see that there's nothing stopping you from writing that book except you.
Great.
Oh, great night. Thank you.